Welcome to Season 3, Episode 20 of History's Greatest Idiots, the show where we take you back through all of human history and to give you lessons you can learn from so you never make mistakes again. Well, not too big mistakes anyway, but who are we kidding? We're humans and we like making mistakes all the time. Sometimes I botch the opening just like I did there. That was rough. I pulled it together. I kind of stumbled over, but I got there at the end. Sort of.
It was a perfect example.
It was
nailed it.
It was. Joining me as ever is my amazing co-host Derek. Derek, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing awesome. I've had a really good time span in here between the last few episodes, spending some time on the internets and the social medias and doing things and stuff.
Yeah.
I was listening to the Super Familiar with the Wilsons, your friends there.
Yeah, the Wilsons.
And that was some fun episodes, and they had, I'm not even sure if it was which one of their podcasts it was, but they had a guy on that was a wrestler.
Yes. Yes.
He's got a very similar name to the name that I've been using on Instagram forever and a day. And I'm like, oh, we're similar because I'm that effing guy on Instagram.
And what's his? Is his very close to that, is it?
That FKING guy.
Oh, okay.
And he's awesome. And he's a big bearded wrestler, cool guy. And it wandered me down all kinds of paths that I learned and seen and followed all kinds of interesting people. So I'm stoked about that.
Yeah. Thank you, Familiar Wilsons and the Wilson family. That's really cool. They do a great podcast. Well, a bunch of great podcasts, actually. But like, because they're also friends with the lead singer of Spin Doctors.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
They're friends with that guy, and he's super amazing. So yeah, they have really interesting chats. I had a great chat with them. Well, I've had a couple of great chats with them a while ago, mostly about the voice acting thing and stuff like that. But yeah, it's human interest stories. I kind of like that. Like, I like hearing about other people's like journeys and stuff. It's kind of, I find that very soothing, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot better than some of the stuff you're getting other places these days.
I know. Yeah. Like, some podcasts are so sharp and so controversial. It's really intense. So thank you, Familiar Wilsons. We love you guys so much. That whole family. They're coming back in March next year. I'm going to get to hang out with them in London. So that'll be cool. Oh,
nice.
Yeah. I'm going to finally get to meet Josh, because last time they came over, he wasn't able to come with them. So that's going to be good. Hey, Kimberly, Bright Eyes. Hello, fellas. Hope you're both feeling well today. Yeah, we're doing all right. Yeah, neither of us are particularly unwell. I'm not in any pain. I mean, I have taken painkillers because I had the back of my head was going brum, brum, brum. I was like, something's brewing. So I better take some paracetamol. So I should be okay. Should be fine. Unless my head fucking explodes, like in Scanners or something like that.
Well, that would be horrible.
It would be horrible. So while we're before we get into the actual episode itself, I want to give a big shout out, because Kimberly's just reminded me, our Patreons. So Kimberly Johnson, our second Patreon ever. Thank you so much. Jesse Christ, our OG, our first ever Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. And Andrew Zavara, who actually sent us a message recently on Patreon, our third ever Patreon, who was like, thank you for getting my name right. We were concerned about that.
Yeah. I'm so bad at interacting with people. Like, I want to interact, but then I'm like, I don't want to seem like I'm too forward. Like, I don't want to be too like pushy. Like, I don't want to be weird.
Yeah, I get that. See, the weird thing is, like, and people say, oh, are you an extroverted introvert? Are you an introverted extrovert? And all these different things. I'm definitely an introvert. I like my own company, and I like quiet. I like museums and art galleries, and I like chilling out. You know, I don't like massive raging parties. And like whenever I'm in a social gathering, I talk to people. I engage with them really interesting ways, and like I take an interest in them. But like after a couple of hours, like I am fucked. My energy is gone. So
for like a week.
Yeah. Like I am like, I need to get out of here. I need to be by myself for a while now. So my social, like my wife is a really social person. And like, I'm fine with her like going from person to person to talk. And I'll just like chill out on the sofa and like read a magazine or maybe talk to one person. I can handle that. But like the energy it takes me to interact with people in any situation is a lot. That's why I like talking to you, Derek. Like I feel like we can unburden ourselves to each other, but like I find it difficult. I like people, but I don't like gatherings or crowds. So
yeah. Well, dude, most of the time, I guess I'd say I like people, but most of the time I'm like, why do you want to talk to me?
Yeah, I'm suspicious as well. I'm like,
what is wrong with you?
I'm not that fucking interesting. What have I done? What have I upset you? Is that why you're talking to me? It's like, no, I just want to talk to you. Like, but I'm not that guy.
Yeah. Okay.
Turns out occasionally we are. It's all right to like just take the compliment.
Yeah, it works for me.
Yeah,
go for it.
We'll just be like, I will assume that you come with good intentions. So thank you.
Yep.
Yes,
that's the new way to approach the world for me.
Yeah, like assume everyone has good intentions instead of, Derek, put your hands behind your back. No, please, no, it wasn't like that. No, not that situation. So yeah, I get that. Like you get paranoid in those situations. Same. I love people, just not in person. Yeah. I don't mind in person. One of our closest friends is downstairs right now, visiting myself and my wife, and yeah, we've had a really lovely time. But like, okay. I think the kind of the lockdowns and stuff has kind of screwed up with my social gathering ability. But yeah, Anyway, I'm glad we're in the same boat with that one. Also, if you want to follow us on social media, you can go to @GreatestIdiots on Twitter/X, or you can go to History's Greatest Idiots on Instagram. And if you want to search for us on YouTube, just search for History's Greatest Idiots. We have all of our recordings on there live and in color. And also, feel free to go to our Patreon, which we just talked about, patreon.com/History's Greatest Idiots. If you'd like to support us financially and see a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, I put on there just now our shortlisting for the Independent Podcast Awards. We've been shortlisted in the comedy section.
I'm pretty stoked about that.
I'm so stoked. I just wish I could afford to go. Like it's the train to London, the 2 nights in the hotel, the food, the kind of the travel in and around London, plus the tickets to the event. It's like 250 quid for all that. And I'm just like, it's just been my wife's birthday. It's coming up to my anniversary. It's coming up to Christmas. Like I don't have that kind of money right now. Also, my wife's car got totaled. Yeah, someone went into the back of it. So that's we've had the sorry.
Was it parked or isn't it?
She was in rush hour traffic going into the center of Birmingham, and someone went into the back of her at like 7 miles an hour. You know, like that thing where you're like slowly creeping forward, stopping, slowly creeping forward, stopping. Wait, it's like 8:30 in the morning and there's traffic everywhere. Someone didn't stop, so they went into the back of her at like 7 miles an hour and wrote the fucking car off, apparently. So it was an electric car. Their car was only slightly damaged. The back of ours was completely fucked. So
wow.
Yeah, and we had this big comfortable thing that just like hugged the road, had comfortable seats, it was warm, it was very quiet, it had really good speakers so you could listen to podcasts on it. Like it was the ideal like long distance journey car. Whereas my little white Hyundai thing that she's borrowing, it's like a jet powered fucking midget. It just flies everywhere. And it's only really designed for me to get from place to place like quickly. So she's like, fucking hell, driving it along. So yeah, not ideal. So we're getting a new car. So it's all change at my place. There's been so much shit happening, honestly. Some of which I'm not even going to talk about, but like it has been all go at my end.
Just a whirlwind.
Yeah, and it's coming up to Christmas.
Say that whirlwind or is it a whirlwind?
Whirlwind. Yeah,
I don't know how to use words.
Whirlwind. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
There we go. And also, it's coming up to Halloween.
Oh yeah,
Halloween. And
I
also,
love this month.
I do love this month. I like the weather changing. I like the leaves falling, but also I like the kind of the horror films and the tone and the crispness of the air again.
I don't have any of that yet.
Yeah, you'll get there. You'll get that change in seasons instead of like boiling in hell, freezing cold season that you get. Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. So next episode we should talk about. Next episode is going to be a Halloween special. So if you guys would be interested in that, our next episode we're going to find someone vaguely creepy or connected to Halloween to talk about. Sorry.
Super creepy.
God, last year it was. Yeah, I need to. We did Ed Gein last year. You did Ed Gein, and I think Elizabeth Bathory, maybe.
We did for sure one year that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because we've done 2 of them now.
Yes. Yeah.
We're like Simpsons Halloween specials. We're mixing them all together. We've forgotten which ones are which now. It's amazing.
It's because we're big time.
We are big time. We are. I just want to point this out as well. 985 followers on Spotify.
Seems like a lot.
It's a lot.
It's like more people than I know.
Well, actually, this is an interesting thing. My boss, who has like 30,000 followers on social media because he's a big time businessman, and he just recently celebrated, like, I think it's either 3 or 4 years of his podcast, and he'd gotten to the 1,000 follower mark. And he publicizes that podcast and he pushes it, and like he has big name guests on and stuff like that. And I kind of feel amazing that in 2.5 years we've nearly hit that, and we are not like business focused podcast or like big name guests or SEO perfected titles. We're just us.
I honestly don't really do much of anything.
It seems to be working though. You know,
I love you guys for listening.
We do.
Everybody out there. I really
love you guys so much. So anyway, now that we've got like a bunch of stuff in the bag, Derek, can you tell us about your idiot, a media hoaxer / humorist?
Yeah, the past few weeks have been just an absolute negative suck with news of violence and atrocities and war and just garbage.
Just the worst.
I usually cover dark people that have done horrendous shit and affected the world in super negative ways. And this dude's actually something else, like, entirely. He's like just what I needed to kind of cheer me up. And I hope this story hits the same way for you. So I stumbled upon him because I was procrastinating, as I do. And I was flipping through documentaries, frantically trying to find somebody that might work. And I landed on this interesting home movie feeling documentary by a filmmaker named Jenny Abel about the life and shenanigans of her father, who was a writer and a lifelong hoaxer, and what might be described as the OG troll before the internet was even a thing. So when I say a troll, I don't mean like he was a bad troll. Like he did it without ill intent. He wasn't bent on torturing others. He tried to do it to point out issues and shine lights on things that he believed were important. And I really believe that these days there's far too many people out there that are trolling and acting with bad intentions and pranking to be mean and mean-spirited to hurt people, to get their twisted rocks off. And he was not that. He genuinely seemed to just want to paint like beautiful colors in people's daily lives through satire and humor.
Nice.
And he was just ridiculous. So here we go. I'm going to tell you about him now. He was born August 2nd, 1924 in Zanesville, Ohio. His father was the shopkeeper at a general store, and his mother played piano at the silent film theater.
Oh, cool. Wow.
His father planted a seed of mischievous in him through some sales tactics that were maybe questionable. He created a false sense of supply and demand by limiting the number of sales to drive up the desire to purchase things, according to at least one article that I found. Because when I found out about this guy and I watched the documentary, I kind of thought, wait a second, is this a hoax? Right. Am I being pranked right now? Is this documentary full of shit? Is this real?
Yeah.
And Irwin Able is a real person, and he was awesome. I think maybe this might be the first person that I've covered on this show that I'm going to say that about.
Well, we did the lead singer of Gwar.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I like.
Never forget that guy. Yeah, he was cool. Yeah.
His upbringing wasn't too far out of the ordinary. He grew up, graduated at Ohio from the Ohio State University for the people that watch football, with a Bachelor of Science in Education. His daughter goes into a lot more depth into his younger days in the film. I'm going to focus on the hilarious jokes. If you want to learn more about that, you can check it out. I'll tell you. He never worked a regular job, according to her. He did have a brief stint as a fertilizer salesman, and then one short job working for AAA.
Okay.
Where he got fired. And you want to guess why he got fired from AAA?
Stealing cars?
No, he gave somebody directions that were just the longest route possible to get where they were going.
That's shit. That was real shit.
Yeah. He's just kind of a fun guy that's just kind of fucking with people.
Fine. I'm all right with that.
By pure chance, he ended up with his career pulling off pranks and hoaxes. According to him, while he was studying education at The Ohio State University, he was tasked with giving a serious address to the incoming freshmen. And as he was excitedly bouncing onto stage to give that address, he tripped and ended up in the orchestra pit. And everybody started laughing, and you know how it goes. So that redirected his entire journey. He just kind of leaned into it.
Oh, so good.
He began that then traveling around and performing arts as a one-man percussionist and a little bit of a stand-up comedian. In his act, he kind of traveled around as Professor Paradiddle, playing a little bit, doing a history of drums, telling some jokes, whatnot. He got bored with that and was considering more of a career of writing comedy, but he wasn't sure how to get started, which I can totally sympathize with because, like, I don't know how to get started myself. But the strangest thing, a little cow sex in the middle of the road provided him with the inspiration he needed to get started.
Sorry. A little cow sex in the middle of the road.
Yeah, indeed. Exactly that. You want to know more, right?
Well, I want to know about the little cow, but also the sex.
It was a big cow and a big bull, and it caused a traffic jam.
What the fuck? Just go round. Just go round.
Well, everybody had to stop and look, and they had to look with disgusted faces, and that's what gave them the idea. But we'll get to it.
Okay. Samuel Serpentin, sorry, just hello and happy time zones. Yes, happy time zones. Yes, we welcome to midday in the Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and 8:20 p.m. UK time. So yeah, hello, welcome. Sorry, please carry on, Derek.
Okay. Yes. That was no, in the late 1950s, Abel pulled off one of his earliest big-time pranks where he posed as a golf professional and then on live television convinced some of the Westinghouse executives to use ballet positions to improve their golf game. Because why not?
Why? Yeah, fuck it. You know?
When he was asked why he does what he does, I think he summed it up perfectly in this quote when he says, "It's a release of the hostility we all have because we're being stepped on in little ways every day," he explained. Wow. The pressure builds and you should let it out. You have several alternatives: crime, drugs, alcohol, election to Congress, bowling, movies. Mine is to hoax.
Wow. I have a murderous rage inside me, and the only way I can satiate it is either by murdering or comedy. So, yeah, okay, fine. Do the comedy. Do the hoaxing, please.
Indeed. Back to the cow fucking. Sometime in 1957, Abel went on his way to a gig with his drums and his comedy, and he comes across this traffic jam where he stops short, doesn't rear end anybody and total their car.
Thank you.
But there's this big bull just doing its thing to a cow in the middle of the road, and it's got a giant traffic jam, and the horrified onlookers were just disgusted by it. And he's like, people sure are really serious about this. They're upset, and they're just sitting here watching. Wouldn't it be funny if there was a group of people that were mad about animal indecency? So he penned this satire-based column about the Society for Indecency to Naked Animals, or SINA, whose goal was to promote morality among animals. And the idea was that all animals should be wearing clothing for the sake of decency.
I love it.
And he wrote this big article and submitted it to the Saturday Evening Post, assuming that the editors would realize that it was satire. And they didn't.
No.
They wrote back very angry, rejecting him, saying that the idea of SINA was deplorable. And the fact that they took him seriously kind of just inspired him to take things up a notch. So he made SINA an actual campaign and started firing out press releases to all kinds of other publications and filing to create an actual organization. And since the idea was so ridiculous and absurd, obviously it drew a ton of interest like right away.
Amazing. This is amazing.
And I mean, with a slogan like "a nude horse is a rude horse," how could it not cause a stir, right?
Fucking hell, that's incredible. How could anybody not? How can they not spot it? I mean, come on. Oh my God.
I mean, it's the 50s. So
okay, yeah. People are still like worried about Martians landing on the radio.
They were quite upset about it, though. And
yeah, I bet.
His whole point, though, was to satire the media itself and their censorship at the time. And it kind of took on a life of its own because almost everybody was willing to accept that it was real. And people were either outraged by the idea or they were super supportive of it. And there was even a lady that tried to donate $40,000 to SINA.
No.
Yeah.
That's big money back in the 50s. Holy shit.
Oh, yeah. There was tons of people that were trying to donate to him, and he turned it away because he wasn't in it for the money. He wasn't scamming people. He legitimately could have been doing that, and he didn't.
Yeah, well, good, because that's like, you take that money and you go, oh, it was a hoax. Oh, sorry. Like, that could be prison time.
Well, he didn't even turn it away as a hoax because he was still keeping it going. He turned it away, letting her know he can't take money from strangers.
You could be a horse. Just a nude horse sending me money. I can't trust you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Sorry, just to interrupt here, this reminds me quite a lot. We're talking about hoaxers and humorists and satirists and stuff like that. This reminds me a lot of the Sacha Baron Cohen film Borat when it first came out, because obviously he was saying, you know, he's from was it Azerbaijan or somewhere
Kazakhstan.
Like that? Kazakhstan. He was saying he was from Kazakhstan, and just before the film came out, the Kazakhstani government put out a release saying this man is not from Kazakhstan. He does not represent the Kazakhstani people. His portrayal of the Kazakhstani people is not accurate. So Sacha Baron Cohen, seeing that this was getting traction, was like, this is perfect. It's like 2 weeks before the film was coming out. This is the best advertising ever. So he held a press conference in front of the steps of the Kazakhstani ambassadorial building, you know, and he was like, this is a hoax sent out by Kyrgyzstan. I am a representative of Kazakhstan. And everyone was like, this is fucking brilliant. He just doubled down. And then some news were like, oh, is this real? Like, some people for a brief second were like, oh my God, there's like a potential international conflict going to happen as a result of this. But it's just one guy fucking around with everyone.
It's weird how how far it can go if just a couple people don't dig just a little further.
Yeah, just go beyond the surface level. That's all you need to do.
Like if somebody out there in a news organization takes one of my stories as fact and runs with it without digging a little further, I mean, this one I went really, really deep on, but that's just because I wanted to make sure it was real.
Yeah.
Anyway, his Cine campaign actually continued on until it reached its high point in 1962. So a long ass time.
Yeah, decades.
He ended up on the CBS News with Walter Cronkite.
No, Cronkite fell for it.
Sort of.
Oh
He's on this segment with Cronkite. As it's airing, a few of the CBS employees recognize the organization's president, G. Clifford Prout, who was actually Abel's pal, Buck Henry, who was a comedian and CBS employee.
Oh, one of their own. Okay.
Yeah. And they kind of exposed it as being an elaborate hoax at that time. And despite Walter Cronkite interviewing him and exposing it as a hoax, he continued with the joke for a few more years.
Because some people are so stupid that even after someone has been exposed as a fraud and dangerous, they'll continue to support them no matter what.
Yeah. Yep.
Who are we talking about again? Stop supporting those people.
Yes. Stop supporting frauds.
Yes. Anyway, sorry.
Without criminal intent, though, there's not much money to be made in hoaxing.
No, there isn't. No. Unless you monetize that through merchandise and books and shit. But that wasn't really an option back then. There was no way to monetize that, really.
Well, I mean, you could get donations of $40,000. And I mean, he had the opportunity to monetize and he didn't. He wasn't running around saying, you know, hey, donate to my legal defense fund or anything like that.
Okay.
Or help me build a wall. Or anyway,
here's a mug.
He was earning money from speeches and books and faux documentaries, but they weren't about his hoax. They were about joking and writing and self-help and finding creative solutions to actual problems.
Right. Which
is good shit, right?
Yeah, that's really good. More of that, please, in the world.
Yes. And his real work in pranks and poking fun was just performance art. And he did it just because it was its own reward. And he felt like he was pointing out problems, really.
Right. Which he was.
He really was. And following his Cine shenanigans, which if you think about it, Sinner. Anyway, Alan and his wife became kind of a writing team and did comedy on late night radio. Where she would do characters and he would do deadpan, nonsensical deliveries in the broadcasts. Then in 1964, they have on this guest by the name of Yetta Bronstein, a 48-year-old Bronx housewife who was running for president of the United States as a candidate for the Best Party. Wow. And her slogan was vote for Yetta and watch things get better.
Amazing. Great slogan.
And her other one was put a mother in the White House. Naturally, you would assume from what they've been doing, this was a character. Her proposals that she threw out on the show were putting a suggestion box on the White House fence.
That works.
Maybe printing a nude picture of Jane Fonda on postage stamps to help the post office cut back from the deficit. And
been a huge success.
Help where people that can't afford Playboy magazines get a little pleasure for 6 cents instead.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm on board with all of these policies.
She also thought, it might be a good idea to put some truth serum in the Senate drinking fountains.
Funny. That's funny.
Or take Congress off salary and put them on straight commission.
Ooh.
I don't know how that would work.
I guess like successful delivery of a policy improvement or something. Like I could actually see how that would work. That's kind of awesome.
And then finally, she said she would. She promised she would staff her cabinet with people who had failed in life and learned to live with it.
Great. Yes, please do use those people more. They have great perspective on things.
So you figure people know it's a joke, right?
Yeah.
No, the press wants interviews, and of course, Yetta isn't available. She's at home with swollen ankles in bed. She can't make it to these interviews. She's got to do it by phone, mainly because she's a character voice played by Abel, his wife, and the picture of her that's out there in the press releases is just a picture of his mom.
Oh, that's cute. Probably not great for her image, but
she liked it. But
Kimberly can get.
They went on and did hundreds of radio interviews, and folks just ate it up. Amazing. She ran 3 times.
3 times. Yeah. Holy shit!
She lost every time, though. Obviously.
Of course. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite parts of him. In the early 1970s, he started going on local New York City television and presenting rebuttals to editorials from the night before as sort of like an exercise in perspectives just for the fun of it.
Amazing.
And sometimes trying to make a meaningful point, just devil's advocating it. One of his funniest ones was saying that Central Park should just be converted to like a open air sex park.
I think it is after about 9 p.m., right?
Oh, it was hilarious, though. Yeah, it's kind of what he was going at, but it was hilarious. Right. In 1971, they put out a mockumentary called Is There Sex After Death? And this was poking fun at the sexual revolution.
Right.
But the morality of the time and censorship caused problems at all points of the production.
Oh, I bet.
From the film lab refusing to develop it because of the nudity that was in it. They were thinking it was a pornography, even though the presentation was super tongue-in-cheek and comedic with the overtones.
Yeah.
It took a bit to get a lab that would go through with it. And then the print ads wouldn't let them advertise the film coming out because sex was in the title.
Right.
And that was pornography.
Well, yeah, apparently.
So they ended up pointing out the insane uptightness and censorship of the time, intentionally, unintentionally. And in order to promote the film, he does what he does. He steps it up a notch and he hoaxes the press. He announces that an international live sex Olympics competition is coming to towns, taking place before a black tie audience to be judged. And he puts out this press release that their show's going to cover it live on air. And they did so using funny clips from the movie and, announcing stuff out. And then on top of that, steps it up even more and creates an opposition Stamp Out Smut, or SOS, to protest against the sex bowl and create even more of a buzz.
Oh, that's so good. He's playing every angle. I love this guy.
Ended up with a line around the block, and people loved it. It was a hilarious movie. The clips that I saw were funny as hell. And they answer the question to the title, but you'll have to find out for yourself.
Okay.
1974 comes along. They put out, 1972 comes along. He wraps himself in bandages and appears at the St. Regis Hotel in New York, where he tells curious media that has gathered for a press conference that he's Howard Hughes. And he's about to have himself cryogenically frozen in order to wait out the weak stock market.
Funny.
They bought it. 30 outlets put the story out. 2 days later, he tells them all it was a stunt. 1974, they put out a mockumentary called Faking the President. You're going to like this one.
Okay.
The intention's to poke fun at the trouble that Nixon's having at Watergate. So they hire a lookalike, and then they re-edit the words from Nixon's actual speeches to make him say and do insane and incriminating things. And then they promote this one by pretending to be a White House former employee that has the missing 18 and a half minutes from the Watergate tapes. He shows up with like a hood on, calls them all around, and he presses play. fucking silent. And he just acts like he's shocked that the tape's also been erased. His tape that he had, and then they promote the movie, and that does well also.
Incredible.
1979, he stages his own death from a heart attack after he overhears people saying they're going to buy his rights.
Wow.
It's published in the New York Times, his obituary, on January 2nd, 1980.
My God.
On January 3rd, 1980, he held a news conference to announce, quote, "Reports of my demise have been grossly exaggerated."
Amazing.
I've heard that quote before, and I love it.
I know. I wish it was his to begin with, but yeah, that's incredible.
In 1980, the news started to get more serious. The world was becoming more serious, and so he's just started getting more seriously ridiculous with his stunts. And somehow the media just kept falling for him. He just gave them the sensational stories that they wanted. And then in addition to that, he kind of just gave them a little bit of background research so they didn't have to do it on their own.
Amazing.
And they ate it up.
That's so cool. And if there's one thing we've learned from doing this podcast, is that if you do the media's work for them, as in you prepare the background information and you do the research, like with the guy who invented climate denying, if you do the work for the media, then they're like, oh yeah, I'll print that. Yeah, thank you. You've saved me so many hours of actual research. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, in the documentary too, they're talking to a lot of the people that he worked with, and even one of the talk shows that brought him on was like, I was just trying to get a byline, and this guy gave it to me.
Wow.
So,
smart.
This is a weird one. When dictator Idi Amin was trying to get away from his horrendous evilness,
yes,
Abel decided he was going to fake a sham wedding that showed Idi Amin was trying to get U.S. citizenship by marrying a bimbo starlet at a hotel. And people showed up to be there for that, including the FBI.
Yeah, I can see why. Yeah.
And then he picked up a dude off the street to pose as an Iranian that was there to return $6 million in funds from his participation in the Iran-Contra affair because he felt bad about it.
Oh my God, where's Ollie North? I've got his money.
When David Duke was running for Louisiana governor, Errol Able decided that the KKK Symphony Orchestra needed to be created to help put out a kinder and gentler image of the Klan.
Oh my God.
He set up a fake concert with tickets and put out music to the radio stations to promote that concert, and then invited David Duke to guest conduct it. And the media was all over that as well.
That is next level brilliant. The KKK Orchestra. Holy shit.
Another one of his more famous ones that was really long running from 1975 to 88 was Omar's School for Beggars. It was a gag that was satiring unemployment and homelessness in the U.S. And despite being exposed multiple times, the gag's exactly what it sounds like. It's a fictional school for professional panhandlers where Abel plays Omar, this fast-talking instructor pitchman that wears a hood over his head and teaches people how to effectively talk people into giving them more money.
Wow.
He shows up on all kinds of talk shows, including Sally Jesse Raphael, The Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder.
Wow.
It's insane what he gets away with. His satire was intended to draw attention to the issues, like I said.
Yeah.
Homelessness, unemployment, Iran-Contra affair.
Yeah.
Idi Amin hiding in the United States to run away from horrible shit.
Yeah, holy shit.
Stuff like that. He started going on daytime talk shows because he figured they were an easy target because they were. And he created an organization like Female Felons. That was a group of women that he made up that serviced inmates on weekend passes. That was designed to show that the prison system was messed up and overcrowding was going to be a thing by the 2000s. And
he was absolutely right.
Yes, but it worked too well because audience love a train wreck and they love anger, and it kind of caused the daytime talk show monsters that we know from the 90s and 2000s. It caused the Jerry Springers and the outrageous the guests that they booked were hoaxers a lot like him after a while.
Interesting.
But he had an idea to counter that too. During the taping of the Donahue talk show on January 21st, 1985, there were 7 members of the audience that fainted. I don't know if you watched that show or were paying attention there, but it was big news around here. The show's producers came out and said the heat made people collapse. Turns out they were all paid to pretend. Right. It was a stunt that Abel put on to protest the decline in quality daytime talk television. And it was a group organized called Faint, or Fight Against Fight Against Idiotic Neurotic Television.
Amazing.
And he wanted to raise the consciousness of the public by going unconscious.
That's incredible.
I love this guy. I just do. I don't know why.
Well, I know why. No, go on.
Why?
Sorry, please carry on. Oh, because it's perfectly. It's perfectly. The tone is absolutely right. There is a shred of part of your brain that's like, this might be a thing. This sounds somewhat legitimate, but actually, because you have kind of brain that you might have, or you are able to question things, you understand that it's satire eventually. But there are people out there that will definitely take this on face value, or who are so desperate for content they will just jump into it.
Right.
Wow. It's so perfect. The tone he gets with every single pitch is so perfect. It's like the longest streak of greatness in comedy history. It's
masterful, honestly. In 1993, when euthanasia was a big topic in the news here with Dr. Kevorkian running around doing his thing, Errol Able set up a fake Florida company called Euthanasia Cruises, where he offered cruises for suicidal participants to party for days and jump overboard.
Oh my God.
You're allowed to bring your dog.
Oh, you're allowed to bring your dog. Fucking hell, that's dog.
Yeah. Later in the 90s, when there was a critical shortage of organ donors, he thought he could draw attention to the problem of that by talking a friend into putting out an ad posing as a poor college student willing to sell his kidneys or lung for profit. Wow. And drawing media attention and interviews for that. And
I feel like that's like a real thing, or has been. Like, that's happened.
A lot of this stuff touches on some kind of dangerous real areas where it's like
maybe, yeah. Holy shit.
1997 rolls along. This is another one of my favorite. He launches CGS Productions to promote gift wrapped pint jars of Jenny McCarthy's urine.
Oh wow. Oh my God.
It was a parody of her role in a shoe commercial where she appeared sitting on a toilet.
Right.
And the press release he put out under the communications director's name for this, the name was Stouty Pew Cow, which is Wake Up Idiots backwards.
Oh, okay.
Amazing. And they still went with it. In 1999, he appeared in the documentary Private Dicks, Men Exposed, in which he claimed to be the current holder of the Guinness World Record for the smallest penis. He initially appeared in the video as Bruce the Musician. The later versions of the documentary changed it to reflect that he was a prankster.
Right.
He didn't take off his clothes because they said he didn't have to.
Thank God.
But they talked about group sex later on. And anyway, 2000 Republican National Convention in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Abel introduces his newest campaign to ban breastfeeding because it's an incestuous relationship between a mother and a baby. It manifests an oral addiction leading to youngsters smoking, drinking, and becoming antisocial.
Oh, that's so brilliant. Oh my God.
200 interviews, and 2 years later, he confessed the hoax to U.S. News and World Reports.
Amazing.
That's a long time to go on for that. And people were mad.
Yeah, I bet they were.
Yeah. How dare you? And he, man, he sprinkled in like Monica Lewinsky breastfed until she was 4, stuff like that. It was great. His last profile hoax came in 2009 when he successfully convinced some reporters that bird watchers were experiencing sexual gratification from their hobby. And the movement that he created for this one was titled "Stop Bird Porn." Drew over 1 million hits.
Oh, that's amazing.
Unfortunately, he passed away for real this time, September 14th, 2018, in Connecticut, complications of cancer and heart failure. And honestly, he's a man with a legacy that some people love him, some people hate him, and I think like he was a masterful artist.
Yeah, and that's the word for it, because this is going to sound odd, but that is an art form. Because if you're able to play human beings like a fucking Stradivarius like that for 60 plus years, that is a master of their craft for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, he shined a brilliant light on society's like silliest problems, and I think he just kind of showed us to just, like, fucking stop taking yourself so seriously.
Yeah,
like address stuff and stop being just mad about it.
Exactly. Good point, Kimberly. Here, can you imagine him on TT with AI now? It would be incredible. Yeah, could you imagine him using AI?
Well, unfortunately, though, the people doing it now aren't. I don't feel like they're masterful. I feel like they're mean and mean spirited.
Yeah. They're punching down too much.
Kinda.
Yeah, or across. And I think his stuff was irreverent enough that it was never really going to hurt anyone. But actually, some of the psychological stuff that's done now is actually quite horrible. I think the few exceptions are probably, Eric Andre kind of immediately comes to mind, who is a surrealist, but also does hoaxes and stuff like that. And yeah, I guess another one for years, and this is something that in the early 2000s I would have, I've talked about this before, Charlie Brooker, who created Black Mirror.
That's a great show.
A great show. Created it, has written most of it. He started out as a computer games writer for like computer games magazines, used to write about those. Then he moved on to producing a satirical website called tvgohome.com.
Okay.
And it was an alternate TV listings website where it made up shows like Detective Bumhat, whose hat was a giant arse, and it would erupt, as he put it, in a violent burst of molten effluence whenever the detective was near an obvious clue. He also like made up a bunch of like, there was a channel, Extreme Sports / Insane Sports. So there was wolf fucking was one of the events. My other favorite one was The World's Strongest and Stupidest Man. And it was oiled up idiots carry a filing cabinet full of coal along the beach using only their eyelids.
Oh my God.
Like stuff like this. And so, and he did like a holiday special, which was really dark. Spend a week under the glare of a giant eye that just watches you constantly. Or the darkest one was a Mexican safari. No one will ever know, which is like, whew. But he had to stop making that website. And I'll tell you why. he saw a TV show that Channel 5 created in the early 2000s called Touch a Truck, or something like that. I think it was called Touch a Truck. Yeah. You had a group of people stand around in like a shopping center or a shopping mall or something like that. There were about 10 of them. And they put their hand on the truck. And they kept it there until everyone had left or gone to have a piss or whatever. And the last person touching the truck won the truck. And that was it. And he was like, at that point, I had to stop because I realized that television had become so stupid. There was no point me doing satire about it anymore. So I created Black Mirror. Which, yeah,
kind of on the nose, though. The Black Mirror these days.
The Black Mirror stuff is frighteningly accurate. And there was one of the first ones was like a member of the royal family is kidnapped and the British Prime Minister has to have sex with a pig live on television to get them back. And then months later, a story comes out about David Cameron at a drunken party fucking a pig's head, which, yeah, that happened. I know.
Ain't that something?
And he at that point he was like, I swear I didn't know about that. I was just writing this thing, and then months later that happened to come out. I swear I'm not in the Houses of Parliament getting those. Yeah, that's really weird. So I think satire, when it's a Black Mirror, is scary good. It absolutely is. There's one particular episode called San Junipero, because a lot of Black Mirror is like dark look into the future, and sometimes it can be quite intense and difficult. Like some of the stories are so dark, but San Junipero is a beautiful love story, which is like a triumph of the human spirit over like kind of terrible, difficult circumstances. So if you ever get a chance to watch San Junipero, I don't know if it's season 3 or something, but the episode is called San Junipero, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen on television. It's perfect. So go ahead and watch that. But as I was saying, satire is at its best when it reflects an element of truth that makes you question whether it's real or not. And that's what he's done. He's taken topics, like you said, he's taken topics that are really serious moments and points in society and satirized them. And that's the point of a lot of this comedy, is to highlight the original thing, to make fun of it, and to lessen the power and control it has over people in society. And that's really important.
I think so.
Yeah.
Super hard to score this one, huh?
Well, he's getting a very low score.
Sorry.
Because like we have spoken about this before, like history's greatest idiot. Sometimes the emphasis is on the idiot and sometimes it's on the greatest part. So I can't think of, I mean, I guess the only thing I can find to fault this guy with is that he didn't make huge amounts of money from it. And I get, you make huge amounts of money, there's going to be more scrutiny, and it makes it difficult to do your art. So it would be harder for him to be active for like over 60 years doing this stuff. But I feel like if he'd made a little bit of money and been able to use some of that money to maybe help other people kind of do stuff like this, maybe that's a really small, tenuous thing, though.
Yeah. So. And he really did live a pretty humble, simple life. And
yeah.
I don't know. I got mad props for the guy, so I'll take a low score.
Yeah. And probably in quite reduced circumstances as well, because I'd imagine that, this is like a scraping by of a living, maybe the odd payment for an interview here or there, or maybe a low-selling autobiography or something like that. But, you're probably not even making minimum wage doing this shit.
He was freelancing and working as a consultant, like helping people solve their problems with creative solutions.
Okay.
And different things like that.
Yeah. So he probably made a bit of money from that.
Freelancing. Yeah. But yeah, in the documentary, they talk about they were losing their house and living, place to place. They struggled to get by.
That is really difficult.
But they were happy.
Exactly. And that's the most important thing. And actually, I it's something we're both doing. It's someone who's taking an aspect of something they're already doing in their professional life and turning it into a passion in their private life to a certain extent. And that's kind of what we're doing with our side hustles. So yeah, mad props to this guy. I think I'm going to give this guy a score of 1.
Oh yes.
I feel like he's the anti Thomas Midgley Jr. I feel like he's such a pure human being.
I feel like that too.
There's something so innately great about this man and his wife. Not enough credit there because she was in on it too, and they seem to be really happy doing this stuff. I kind of have to score him with a 1. The lowest ever score.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's so not an idiot that we have to score him the lowest we have ever scored anyone on this podcast before.
I look at that not as a failure, but as a triumph.
It was a triumph. I enjoy doing this show. We laugh a lot. I have never laughed like that on this podcast before. I was having trouble breathing at certain points there.
Oh, nice.
That was really cool. And, hearing that, I'm like, oh, I'm envious of him a little bit,
Man, watching that documentary and listening to his daughter narrate this story of her father's life and talk about, like, if he would have taken a 9-to-5 job, he would have burnt out. And I started thinking about myself, and I'm like, oh man, the different paths that we could have taken.
I know. It's crazy, isn't it? That he was brave enough to do that and so good at it that it kept on working. Wow, what a really special guy. Yeah, I'm happy to score him a 1. Sorry, remind me what his name was and the name of that documentary.
It's Alan Irwin Able, and the name of the documentary is in my article that I closed.
Right,
but it's Raising Cain.
Raising Cain.
One second. Here, entertain them while I find it.
Okay, so Alan Ernest Abel was
Irwin Able.
Irwin Able. Ernest would have been even better because that would have had implications itself. So Alan Irwin Able. Great name. Really great name.
Man, I lost it.
That's okay. We'll find it. Alan Irwin Able documentary. You'll find it. And I'm sure it'll be available on one of the services or possibly on YouTube.
It was on Amazon Prime here in the States, and I know there's probably an unauthorized copy on YouTube.
Sure.
But I'd rather that you support his daughter. The film is Abel Raises Cain. That's what it was.
Abel Raises Cain. Great title. Man.
Yes. It won,
Abel Raises Cain.
It won at the Boston Independent Film Festival and the Slam Dance Film Festival for Best Documentary.
So Alan Irwin Able. Irwin Able. Yeah, Alan Irwin Able. Man, that's a mouthful. Irwin Raises Cain. Go and support his family, his daughter, and help his memory live on. That is such a great story. Thank you for telling me that, man. I needed that this fucking week, man.
Awesome.
Holy shit. So from a guy who scored 1 out of a possible 100 to someone who I suspect is going to score higher. Now, when I researched this guy, and we've kind of given it away by having the thumbnail the way we have, I've given it away to you and anyone who's seen like the thumbnail in advance. I knew this guy was a piece of shit. I knew he was a Hollywood idol, and a few years ago I discovered like some of the stuff that he had done. Until I researched him properly, I hadn't realized the sheer magnitude of this man's horribleness, I think, until I delved into it. Pretty much anything you can think of as a terrible human being, this man has done it. It is awful. So let me tell you the story of Errol Flynn, Hollywood's most famous prick. I want to hear the schemes he didn't do. That's actually a good point of the documentary, for sure. That'll probably be in there as well. We need a biography of that guy. We need a biopic of that guy. Can you imagine? Oh my God, Netflix again. Give us the fucking money.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway.
Put us on staff.
Yeah, but seriously, you can make so much money with us. And we work very limited hours. Errol Leslie Thompson Flynn was born in Tasmania On 20th of June 1909 at Queen Alexandra Hospital in Battery Point, Tasmania. So he is a literal Tasmanian devil.
Nice. I was waiting for it. If you didn't say it, I had to.
We have to, for sure. Yeah. And actually, a bunch of people have referenced this. They're like, he's the original Tasmanian devil. Oh, why is he a Tasmanian devil? Because he's an arsehole. His father, Theodore Thomas Flynn, was a lecturer and later professor of biology at the University of Tasmania. So, smart guy.
Okay.
Yeah. His mother was born Lily Mary Young, but shortly after marrying Theodore at St. John's Church of England in Birch Grove. Sorry. I need to say this properly because it's very confusing. Marrying Theodore at St. John's Church of England, Birch Grove, Sydney, Australia. Yeah.
Okay.
On the 23rd of January 1909, she changed her first name to Marrell. So Marrell Mary Young. I don't know why she changed her first name, but
Marrell married Errol?
Marrell married Teddy.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Marrell married Teddy, but Marrell was Mary originally, but she married and then wasn't Mary anymore. She was Marrell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's. I hope nobody was high listening to that because I just confused the fuck out of them. So his mother
shell gamed me.
Yeah, that's like a Russian nesting doll of insanity. Errol Flynn's mother plays a big part in like maybe why he's as fucked up as he was. Flynn described his mother's family as seafaring folk. Not even sure what the fuck that means.
They had a boat.
They had a boat. Yeah, they were on the water a bit. They had a canoe. There you go. And this appears to be where his lifelong interest in boats and the sea originated. Both of his parents were Australian-born Irish, English, and Scottish descent. Despite Flynn's claims, there is no evidence that indicates he was descended from any of the mutineers from the Bounty, which was a big thing. There was a mutiny on the Bounty, and the mutineers took the boat to a place called Pitcairn Island and lived there away from the law because they were basically wanted for death as a result of stealing the ship and kicking the captain off or whatever.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Mutiny on the Bounty has been turned into a film a couple of times. I think.
Okay.
I want to say that Mel Gibson was in a version of it, maybe, and one of the original versions also had. Who's the guy from The Godfather? Last Tango in Paris.
Marlon Brando?
Marlon Brando. Thank you. Yes, okay. Marlon Brando was in it. And that was at the point in time where he was like, yeah, I'm just going to tape my lines to the back of this guy so that I can read them because I'm not learning that shit. So despite Flynn's claims, he says he's descended from the Bounty mutineers. He's not, because all of their descendants live on Pitcairn Island now. Okay. After spending some time in Papua New Guinea, he returned to Australia where he attended the Hutchins School, Hobart College, the Friends School, and Albuera Street Primary School, and was expelled from all of them.
Wow.
Yeah, this guy.
What did he do?
Right.
Okay.
So let's get into it. Some of those schools were in Papua New Guinea. But he had to flee Papua New Guinea, and his family did, because at the age of 7, he was caught playing doctor with a girl. And yeah, so he and his family fled so that they weren't killed. Yeah. While some stories claim that he was expelled from some of these schools for stealing, which is likely the case, we'll get to that in a bit as well, Flynn boasted that he was kicked out of the school for having intimate relations with a school laundress. Someone who did the laundry. Yes. Now, I want to point out, Errol Flynn is full of shit. Like more so than even Steven Seagal. He lies like he drinks, basically constantly. And I don't believe it. His grasp on reality is about as good as his grasp with self-control. He claimed in his biography, which is awful, it's horrible, that he went back to New Guinea at a certain point and became a slave trader. He claimed, that he would go to the locals and say, hey, I'm going to go to a plantation or a farm. Do you want to come with me? We can go and like have a nice time. We can hang out at the beach and we can go to the plantation. There's food there and stuff. And he claims that he took them to the plantation and then sold them to the farmers and the plantation owners and tricked them into it. And he just like claimed it. There's no evidence that it ever happened. But he said, oh, yeah, I was a slave trader and a pirate. Like, as if that's a good thing to claim. I know. Why would you claim that? Why would you claim to be a slave trader?
That's weird.
That's not a good thing to be. You would think that you would cover that up in a biography, not boast about something that didn't happen. He
it's
also
like all the
said,
stuff I did I don't talk about.
Well, yeah. And like, why would you print something that's not true that makes you look like evil? He admitted it. The thing is, he admitted a lot of stuff that we know is not true. So
that's so weird.
It's so weird, but that's not even the half of it. He also claimed that he was caught by like pirates or the authorities or something, and they were chasing him through the jungle, and he shot one of them in the neck and killed them. So he claims in his biography that he killed a man.
So he wrote a fiction book.
He basically did. He was like, I'm Errol Flynn. I was a pirate. I was a slave trader. I also murdered a man. But like none of it. And he also claimed that he was acquitted of it at trial because it was self-defense. So...
Was he maybe drunk and remembering movies he had acted in?
Maybe. Yes. That makes more sense than the reality of it. But
Jesus.
Yeah. I couldn't find out any specifics on whether the actual trial for murder took place, but a lot of people seem to think it did. So maybe he did kill someone.
Wouldn't that be some shit? You just lie about killing somebody and then go on trial for it?
I know.
And it didn't happen?
Because it didn't happen. Like you're acquitted of it. But it may have actually happened. And it's even more, I mean, it shows at the time, no records of it, so it didn't destroy his life. So he went on to be a huge star, even though he actually may have killed someone. And if that part's true, maybe he was a slave trader as well. So that's Errol.
Made him a movie star.
I know. Are we sure Steven Seagal isn't related to him? I mean, maybe. I mean, they're all related in the bond of bullshittery. So, yeah. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, this is all before he's become a star. He's still in like his 20s when this shit's happening. Maybe even younger. After being dismissed from a job as a junior clerk with a Sydney shipping company for pilfering petty cash. So he stole. So that stuff about him being kicked out of school for stealing, it's probably more likely. He went to Papua New Guinea at the age of 18, seeking his fortune in tobacco planting and gold mining in the Morobe goldfield. This is probably where he did the slave thing. He spent the next 5 years oscillating between living in New Guinea and Sydney. Also had a bunch of engagements and relationships that went nowhere during this time because of his rampant womanizing and theft and apparently slaving people. I don't know. It's hard to know with this guy. Australian filmmaker Charles Chauvel was making a film about the mutiny on the Bounty in 1933 called In the Wake of the Bounty, a combination of dramatic reenactments of the Bounty and a documentary on present-day Pitcairn Island. Now, incidentally, please don't Google Pitcairn Island. It's an interesting place. There's only like maybe 5 families on the whole thing. They've got like one shop. It's very kind of like Lost Island, a few hundred people living there. The only problem is if you Google Pitcairn Island, you're more likely to come up with the only thing it's really famous for other than the Bounty, in that it's one of the site of one of the most horrific sexual abuse cases in modern history.
Well, I'm glad that you told me that, because you told me not to Google it. And I almost just did it.
They had to build a prison to house the people on the island who were found guilty of it. And the prison was like kind of an open door. Like they could come and go and visit their families all they wanted. And like there's a whole divide on the island. Like, was it abuse? Was it not abuse? It's like, don't get into it. It's dark. About as dark as what we're about to talk about, actually. So fair warning. This is awful. Errol Flynn was terrible. Chauvel was looking for someone to play the role of Fletcher Christian. There are different stories about the way Flynn was cast. According to one, Chauvel saw his picture in an article about a yacht wreck involving Flynn. So he crashed a fucking yacht and wrecked it. Of course, you write an article about it. Yeah, he looks good. I'll cast him. He's already crashed Wombo. The most popular account is that he was discovered by a cast member, John Warwick. The film was not a strong success at the box office, but Flynn was the lead role, leading him to go to Great Britain in late 1933 to pursue a career in acting. So he's made one film. It was a bit of a bomb, but he's shown enough potential to go to the UK and train. And he actually trains as a stage actor, which is a very good, particularly in the 1930s. He'll have been surrounded by like John Gielgud and like Laurence Olivier and like some of the greatest actors in history. So that's a good time to be training as a stage actor in the UK. Yeah, big opportunity. So he joined the Northampton Repertory Company in the town's Royal Theatre, where he worked as an actor while receiving training for 7 months. But in 1934, Flynn was dismissed from the Northampton Rep for, if I had to let you guess what he was dismissed for, what would you have said?
Probably not playing doctor. Stealing.
Nope. Stealing would have been a good guess. That seems to be one of the main reasons he's gotten into trouble this far, along with womanizing and slave trading and possible murder. But no, he threw a woman down a flight of stairs.
Oh,
yeah!
Ouch! What the hell?
Stage manager just picked her up and threw her down the stairs. What the fuck is wrong with this man? I want to remind you at this point, he's 23 years old. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that'll get you fired. Was there no legal?
He got away with it. They were just fired? He got away with it because it was the 30s, and they were like, well, she was a woman. I guess you didn't beat her as well. So yeah, he got away with that. No, weird. I know. He got away with that. No charge, but he was sacked. But he returned. So let's see. He returned to London. Asher cast him as the lead in Murder at Monte Carlo, a quota quickie made by Warner Brothers at the Teddington Studios in Middlesex, which is just like, we have a budget, we need to use it, let's make a quick film. The movie was not widely seen. It's also been lost to time. Like, there's no prints of it left. But Asher was enthused. Yeah, which is really sad. But Asher was enthusiastic about Flynn's performance and cabled Warner Brothers in Hollywood, recommending him for a contract. And executives agreed after they saw a picture of him because he's a handsome, dashing guy, and he's quite tall as well. So he's like he fits the Clark Gable mold at this point. And they send him over to Los Angeles. So Flynn found himself being considered for a big-time role in the big-budget 1935 swashbuckling film Captain Blood by Warner Brothers. Although he was essentially unknown at the time, his initial screen test proved to be enough for the studio to cast him in the part. The studio's judgment turned out to be right, as the swashbuckling film turned Flynn into a major movie star in the blink of an eye. And by 1940, he was the 14th most popular actor in the US and the 7th in the UK. And there were a lot of actors at this point churning out films.
It's because he was an actual pirate before, obviously.
Well, I mean, allegedly, yeah. He may have done some awful, awful shit. So he was he was like method for this guy. So now let's get to his big time. This is like his peak. Flynn followed this up with his most famous film, The Adventures of Robin Hood, in 1938, playing the title role, and you go, aha! And they're like wearing green pants and the color stuff. So playing in the title role opposite Olivia de Havilland's Marion, the movie was a global success. It was the 6th top-grossing film of 1938. It was also the studio's first large-budget color film using 3-strip Technicolor process. The budget for Robin Hood was the highest ever for a Warner Brothers production. Up to that point, $2.47 million.
Holy crap.
In 1938 money. But it more than made back its cost and turned a huge profit, as it grossed $3.9 million in the US and $2.495 million overseas. So, doing my usual thing, adjusting for inflation, the budget for the film was $52.8 million, and the gross was it's mid-budget film now, I would say. It's slightly bigger than Independent. Maybe
it's a decent budget film. Yeah,
it's a decent budget film. Maybe like a big horror movie. Maybe like kind of a one of those like Insidious films. Maybe it's that kind of budget level film. Yeah. And it made back 136 million, 136.6 million. So
that's
nice return.
Double.
Yes. Yeah. And not, we also have to remember at the time, there was no advertising. Like, when you were calculating these days, when we talk about a film's return, it has a $200 million budget, but you're going to spend that on advertising as well. So it has to make back 400 million before it breaks even. And then you're hoping for at least 100 million profit. There was no, like, advertising was peanuts back then. So you're talking about no extra cost on top of it. So,
and it's
actually,
1938, right?
Yeah. So that's $86 million worth of profit right there. So it's good money.
I imagine, though, well, I guess it's at the beginning of bad times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And 1938 as well. It's important to think about that, this is still kind of at the tail end of the Depression, just before the Second World War. There's not a lot of money around at this point. We're still in a really shit time. So for a film to make that kind of money, that's a good sign that he's a big draw. Thief, slaver, murderer, abuser. He's really starting to fill his despicable card. Kimberly, by the end of this, he's going to have the full bingo, I swear to God. After this, Warner Brothers, because they realized they had a cash cow, did everything they could to protect Errol Flynn, including making up a story where he and his wife were in a car accident because kind-hearted Errol Flynn had swerved off the road to avoid hitting a cat and crashed his car in the process. And him and his wife, they were so beaten up about it because they were injured in the crash. Actually, the real reason they made up that story, he'd been beating his wife, and they needed a cover for it.
Knew it.
Yep. Apparently,
I knew that was coming, man.
I know. It's so fucking bad. And apparently, these two fought all the time. It wasn't like one-sided, but that's no excuse at all. Like, and they were called the Fighting Flynns, like by other Hollywood people. So, like, that's how bad they got. And he'd have to show up on set, and that's one of the reasons you see old pictures of Errol Flynn around this time with like tons of makeup on. It wasn't just for the screen. He was covered in like bruises and scars and shit because he'd be fighting with his wife.
They were that crazy ass couple.
They were that couple, and it's not like they were like, they're always fighting over the most minor things. No, it's because he was trying to fuck every other woman on the planet. So,
that makes sense.
And he was drunk all the time. It also received lavish praise, and this is the Robin Hood film, lavish praise from critics, and became a world favorite. In 2019, Rotten Tomatoes summarized the critic consensus: Errol Flynn thrills as the legendary title character, and the film embodies the type of imaginative family adventure tailor-made for the silver screen, which is kind of true. Like, the Robin Hood films are kind of very easily accessible, even though they're set in the past. Like, I feel like most Robin Hood films, no matter how shit they are, they're always going to appeal to families because they're relatively harmless for the most part. Exploitation of the people and freeing them, that's relatively harmless. So in 1995, the film was deemed culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant by the United States Library of Congress and was selected for preservation by the National Film Registry. So it's one of those films that's now like sealed away for the end times so that we can watch it when the world fucking burns.
When the aliens get here, it's on the lists of things they're watching.
Ooh, Errol Flynn. Well, I bet he was a really nice guy. Years later, in a 2005 interview, Olivia de Havilland described how, during the film, she decided to tease Errol Flynn, whose wife was on set and watching closely. This is the wife that's constantly fighting with him. De Havilland said, "And so we had one kissing scene, which I looked forward to with a great delight. I remember I blew every take, at least 6 in a row, maybe 7, maybe 8, and we had to kiss all over again. And Errol Flynn got really rather uncomfortable, and he had, if I may say, a little trouble with his tights." You see, kids, back in the 1930s, they didn't have a word for cock tease, but that's what that was. And I also, like, why would you do that? Him and his wife are just going to argue about it.
I was just wondering if she was going to punch her.
Maybe. You never know. But apparently him and Olivia de Havilland were in love, but it never lined up. And she was always like, "No, I'm not one of your floozies. I'm not going to fuck you. You're married." Like, and he was like, "Oh, please. Oh my God. You're the only one that's turning me down." So the final duel between Robin and Sir Guy of Gisborne Basil Rathbone, another very famous film star at the time, who used to play Sherlock Holmes a lot.
Okay.
Is a classic echoing the battle on the beach in Captain Blood, where Flynn also kills Rathbone's character after a demonstration of fine swordplay in these like incredibly choreographed like fencing things. According to Faulkner's student Tex Allen, who was the choreographer for the film, Faulkner had good material to work with. Veteran Basil Rathbone was a good fencer, and Flynn, though new to the school of fencing, was incredibly athletic and really, really quick. And that's one thing that's noted. Errol Flynn was fucking hard. He would fight everyone. So,
I mean,
he's drunk.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he's captured slaves, so why wouldn't he try and punch people? Yeah, he's very athletic, he's drunk all the time, and he's quick to temper, so why not get in a few scraps? Yeah, and you probably can't injure him because he's so drunk, he's not going to feel it. Yeah, the success of The Adventures of Robin Hood did little to convince the studio that their prize swashbuckler should be allowed to do other things, but Warner Brothers actually relented and allowed Flynn to try a screwball comedy called Forza Crowd. Despite the presence of de Havilland and direction of Kurtz, it was not a success. So actually, they would have been like, yeah, that didn't pay off. So
from swashbuckler to slapstick?
Yeah, it's a bit of a leap, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
And it didn't work. Anyway, he followed it up. The Sisters, 1938, a drama showing the lives of three sisters in the years from 1904 to 1908, including a dramatic rendering of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, was quite memorable and popular. Flynn played an alcoholic sports reporter, Frank Medlin, who sweeps Louise Elliott Betty Davis off her feet on a visit to Silverbow, Montana. Their married life in San Francisco is difficult, and Frank sails to Singapore just hours before the catastrophe. So this is basically Errol Flynn playing himself.
Right.
It's booze, broads, and boats. That's all he's doing in this film. It's like,
yeah,
holy shit.
Nailed it.
I could do method again. Oh my God. The original ending of the film was the same as The Boat, where Louise married a character named William Benson, but preview audiences disliked the ending, and a new one was made for the film where Frank comes to Silverbow to find her, and they reconcile, and everything's fine. Apparently, audiences wanted Errol Flynn to either get the girl or vice versa. They were just like, no, we want Errol Flynn kissing on screen all the time. No unhappiness. Shut the fuck up.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Flynn was also had a powerful dramatic role in The Dawn Patrol, a remake of a pre-coded 1930s drama of the same name about the Royal Flying Corps fighter pilots in World War I and the devastating burden the officers carried by the officers who must send men out to die every morning, which is a true story. That shit really happened because World War I, the planes were made of balsa wood and spit, basically.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And sorry, what were you going to say?
I said good luck.
Yeah, good luck with that. See you later, chaps. Try not to piss yourselves and die. Flynn and co-star Basil Rathbone and David Niven led a cast that was all male and predominantly British. Director Edmund Goulding's biographer Matthew Kennedy wrote, "Everyone remembered a set filled with a fraternal good cheer. The filming of Dawn Patrol was an unusual experience for everyone connected with it, and dissipated for all time the legend of the Britishers are lacking in a sense of humor. The picture was made to accompaniment of more ribbing than Hollywood had ever witnessed. The setting for all of the horseplay was the beautiful British manners and the buttercups." I don't even know where he's going with this. "The expression of polite and pained shock on the faces of Niven, Flynn, Rathbone, etc. when women with visitors were embarrassed was the best part of the nonsense." So the women were privy to them fucking around and they were embarrassed by it. Now, he says that, it was all in good jest and it was all ribbing and stuff like that. That's not what David Niven says. David Niven has a very different story. David Niven went on an interview in the 1970s and said that he remembers being on the set one day with himself and Errol Flynn, and they were on horseback. They were actual kind of trained riders that have been brought in from Hollywood because there had to be horse scenes and stuff and people riding around on horses. It's a bit like Days of Thunder. They've got to be on a bike or a horse. They've got to do manly things.
Gotcha.
And one of the cowboys deliberately fucked with Errol Flynn's horse to get it to buck him off, and sure enough, it did. It flung him up in the air, and he fell backwards and landed on his back. And obviously, Flynn was pissed, and all these cowboys were laughing and blah blah blah. And the cowboy looked at Errol Flynn and he said, "Do you want to make something off it?" And Flynn grabbed him by the throat, threw him off the horse, and beat the shit out of him to the point where he was unconscious and had to be taken away in an ambulance.
Oops.
Yeah, Errol Flynn was a dangerous man. Don't fuck with this guy. He beats his wife and you. So
that was a miscalculation right there.
That was, yeah, don't do that. Why would you get a horse to throw someone off? That killed Christopher Reeve, basically. I mean, he was paralyzed, but it shortened his life significantly. That's a really shitty thing to do. Sometimes
cowboys can be an odd breed.
Yeah, they can. And sometimes they get beaten to the point where they're eaten through a straw for a month as well, apparently. So in 1939, Flynn and de Havilland teamed up again with Kurtz for Dodge City, the first Western for them both, set after the American Civil War. Flynn was worried that audiences would not accept him in Westerns, but the film was Warner Brothers' most popular film of 1939, so he's on top of the world, and went on to make a number of movies in the genre. So he's doing all right. He's spreading his wings a bit. Flynn continued to be a bankable star in the 1940s, but began to go off the rails. This is where it was pretty fucking bad to begin with, but this is where it gets awful, horrible. Flynn became a naturalized American citizen the 14th of August, 1942. With the United States fully involved in the Second World War, he attempted to enlist in the armed services, but failed the physical exam due to a recurrent malaria, which he contracted in New Guinea when he was being a slave trader. He had a heart murmur because of all of the booze and being a dangerous human being. Various venereal diseases,
that various. Makes sense.
Yeah, he is a bucket of clap and stuff. And latent pulmonary tuberculosis. He's got TB.
Ooh.
And malaria and a heart murmur, and his dick's falling off. So,
wow! Holy shit!
Toastazoid. Tuberculosis. I know, in the 1930s, and he's fucking his way through Hollywood at this point. So,
yikes!
I mean, hey, sorry, love, you've got crabs and TB now. So it appears I napped too long. Toastazoid, welcome. We're really glad you're here for this one. So Errol Flynn couldn't get into the army, even though he was a big Hollywood action star. Not to mention he's crazy as hell. Yes, he is fucking insane. You do not need this man in the army. So let's kind of list that again. Heart murmur, tuberculosis, every sexually transmitted disease under the sun, and malaria, and fucked up addiction to alcohol at this point, because he's a full-blown alcoholic at this point. Flynn was mocked by critics and reporters who claimed he was a draft dodger because the studio refused to admit that their star promoted for his physical beauty and athleticism, and he was athletic, had been disqualified due to health problems and the fact he was riddled with the clap. The role of Gentleman Jim Corbett in Raoul Walsh's Gentleman Jim in 1942 was one of Flynn's favorites. Warner Brothers purchased the right to make the film of Corbett's life from his widow, Vera, specifically because she liked their handsome, athletic, and charming leading man. Vera, stay the fuck away from this man. He'll either fuck you or throw you down some stairs.
Yeah.
Grandfather Nurgle loves this guy. Oh, man, you are... Yeah, well... might have a different opinion after this. The movie bears little resemblance to the boxer's life. The story was a crowd pleaser, despite or perhaps because of its departure from reality. Gentleman Jim packed theaters, according to Variety. It was the third Errol Flynn film to gross at least $2 million in profit in that time. So that's $50 million profit in 2023 money. And that was the third Errol Flynn movie that year alone.
Dude, the studios have to love him.
I know. So he's made them $150 million in 2023 money profit just by himself. That is huge money. So the dude was big box office. And no wonder they're protecting him and making up all sorts of fucking lies about this guy. So Flynn eagerly undertook extensive boxing training for this film, working with Buster Wiles and Mushy Callahan. What a fucking name that is.
This is an awesome name.
That is an awesome Mushy Callahan
from now on.
Yeah. How do you get that name? Because my face is all fucked up from the boxing. Callahan's remembrances were documented in Charles Hyam's Errol Flynn, The Untold Story. Errol tended to use his right fist. I had to teach him to, well, he's only been beating up his wife. I had to teach him to use his left and move very fast on his feet. Luckily, he had excellent footwork. He was dodgy. That's the slave trading. And he could duck faster than anybody I saw. That's also part of the fighting with cowboys. And by the time I was through with him, he'd jab with his left like a veteran. So it was a bit like De Niro and Raging Bull, in that by the time he was finished with that film, he was like, this guy could fight for a title. Like, he's that fucking good.
Damn.
Unlike Mickey Rourke. Flynn took...
This is Flynn.
Yes. Watch out, Mrs. Flynn. You've just made him a more effective boxer. Flynn took the role seriously and was rarely doubled during the boxing sequences. In The Two Lives of Errol Flynn by Michael Friedland, Alexis Smith told of taking the star aside. It's so silly working all day and then playing all night and dissipating yourself. Don't you want to live a long life? Errol was his usual, apparently unconcerned self. I'm only interested in this half, he told her. I don't care about the future.
That sounds like a lot of people these days, I think.
That does. And that's the fuck you, doctor, I will live forever attitude that like teenagers have. But this man's pushing 30 at this point. It's time to stop with that shit. So
yeah, you should try to grow out of that stuff by your 20s.
Yeah,
I mean mid-20s.
Like enjoy life, have fun in your 20s and stuff. But there's gonna have to come a point where being like a fucking insane lunatic, drinking all the time, getting into fights, being full of every venereal disease, malaria, heart, TB, like at some point you might want to slow down.
Well, I'm not saying you should grow out of that stuff by your mid-20s. I don't think you should have any of that stuff.
No, you shouldn't. You probably shouldn't have TB by your 20s. Like, get your fucking vaccinations. So anyway, guess what happened next with this man not caring for the future? Flynn collapses on set on the 15th of July, 1942, while filming a boxing scene with Ward Bond. Filming was shut down while he recovered. He returned a week later. In his biography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, we'll get to that later, Flynn described the episode as a mild heart attack. So, as long as it's only mild, yeah, just a smidge of a heart attack, just a little. Anyway, Flynn's 31. He's just had a heart attack.
That's an early heart attack.
Even for the 30s and 40s, that is the weirdest age to have a heart attack. You shouldn't be having that until you're in your 50s like this point in time. Like a lifetime of smoking and drinking and eating greasy food, that'll get you a heart attack in your 50s at this point in time. Not at 31. Yeah. That's young.
That takes work and talent.
Yes, that is. That's some insane bullshit to get yourself a heart attack at that age. In late 19... here we go. So he's had a heart attack. You'd think he'd take a break at this point. He doesn't need any extra stress in his life. But in late 1942, two 17-year-old girls, Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterley, separately accused Flynn of statutory rape at his Bel Air home. At the Bel Air home of Flynn's friend Frederick McAvoy, and on board Flynn's yacht Sirocco, respectively. The scandal received immense press attention. Many of Flynn's fans founded organizations to publicly protest the accusations. One such group, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the American Boys Club for the Defense of Errol Flynn, or ABCDEF. Yeah.
What year was this? Was
1942. I mean, this is just before Mr. Abel. It's close, isn't it? It sounds fake. Apparently, that group accumulated a substantial membership that included William F. Buckley Jr., a man who was eventually became a right-wing political kind of analyst and writer, and who was famously absolutely fucking demolished on television by Gore Vidal because they decided to have a TV debate, and William F. Buckley showed up like, oh, yes, I'm having a really wonderful time at this event, and everyone's wrong except me. And Gore Vidal had prepared for weeks and done research and fucking wiped the floor with this guy. It's hilarious to watch. So, yeah.
Is that on YouTube?
there's a documentary about it on like Netflix or something, but it's also a stage play about it. Okay. It's famous because they had 3 debates, and Buckley was like so shell shocked by the third one. He was like, "Holy shit! I actually have to do work. I better research this Gore Vidal guy. Wait, he's related to the Kennedys, and he might be gay. Oh, I'll go after that. Okay. So yeah. But yeah, William F. Buckley is one of these guys who's like never worked a hard day in his life, but claims that he's like a real man and he's like a super hard Republican. So it's like, yeah. Anyway,
like Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro is exactly who this guy is like. Anyway, back to Errol Flynn and this statutory rape trial. The trial took place in late January and early February 1943. Flynn's attorney, Gerald Giesler, impugned the accuser's characters and morals, of course, and accused them of numerous indiscretions, including affairs with married men. Well, I mean, Errol Flynn is married. And in Satterlee's case, an abortion, which was illegal at the time. So literal victim blaming. He noted that the 2 girls who had said they didn't know each other filed their complaints within days of each other. Although the episodes allegedly took place more than a year apart, he implied that the girls had cooperated with the prosecutors in hopes of avoiding prosecution themselves. See, it's nice that you've come up with this theory that it's all a conspiracy, but actually what happened was one girl came forward with the accusation. The police heard about it, and then they were like, oh, this is weird. It's similar to that other complaint we had months ago. Why don't we talk to that person again? And then the police talked to them, and they both decided separately to file. It just so happened that they filed close to each other because the police were talking to them at the same time. So actually, it's not a conspiracy. The police just went to talk to the other person, and eventually they decided to file charges. So
it's a weird thing how like sometimes you can get charged with a crime or you know, because shit happened.
Yes, exactly.
Did something.
I know, Russell Brand.
Anyway.
So Flynn was acquitted because of course he was. It was the 1940s, and you know, oh my god, she had an abortion. Terrible. But the trial's widespread coverage and lurid overtones permanently damaged his carefully cultivated screen image as an idealized romantic leading player who definitely doesn't have syphilis. He continued making movies, but then became less and less successful. And in 1947, he took probably the wisest move he could have made at this time. He signed a 15-year contract with Warner Brothers, which guaranteed him $225,000 per film, which at the time, you know, inflation and all that is around $3.1 million per film in today's money, which is pretty good because he's still churning out like 2-3 films a year. So, you know, you get in $9 and a bit million, but he needed it because at this point, the IRS are chasing him because he's not paying his fucking taxes as well.
God.
I know, and he's on his second marriage, and I don't think he's keeping up with the payments of alimony. So,
well, hold on, though. What kind of moron signs a 15-year contract with a dude that had a heart attack at 31?
I know. I maybe there's an element of where they're like, okay, you know, we'll look after you. You know, like you're not going to live long. Here's your retirement sort of thing. Like you can still make films with us, and maybe they'll make a bit of money, but you know, you've earned us so much money. Here's a bit of money. You know,
yeah, maybe like, they figured they wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and I guess like there's still like a sense that he's kind of bankable and he might have a comeback, so you might as well keep him under contract. And for all of the criticism Warner Brothers get, and it still continues to this day because they are a shit studio. They are terrible. I'm actually on their side in terms of looking after talent. Where like, okay, you know, you've had a really rough time. I mean, he was a terrible person, but looking after your people who may not be long for this earth and signing them to a 15-year contract, I'm actually on board with that.
I was thinking along the lines of like sports, like sign somebody for a long contract and then you're not even able to use them. But yeah, it makes sense with you know, entertainment and art. People. Yeah, but I guess in general too.
Yeah. There's an interesting story I covered years ago when I was doing the wrestling journalism thing, and it's about Eric Bischoff. And Eric Bischoff is a piece of shit. He's a horrible human being, but he actually did something really good. Eddie Guerrero had a massive car accident. He also OD'd in the car, and like doctors thought he wouldn't live through the night. So Eric Bischoff showed up with a 6-year contract with like a $500,000 downside guarantee on the contract, and made him sign him that night so that if he died, his wife would have got the contract and all the merchandise rights and $500,000 a year every year for 6 years. Like, actually, I was like, that's a really classy move. Didn't have to do that. Yeah. So that's your one saving grace, Eric Bischoff. You fucking horrible man. So let's get to the rest of his failing career and focus on the salacious stuff, shall we? Actually, we'll leave his career behind. Fuck his career. Flynn developed a reputation for his womanizing, hard drinking, chain smoking, and for a time in the 40s, or basically for the rest of his life, half of the money probably went on doctors and medications. I mean, yeah, Kimberly, he's like spending a shitload on drugs at this point, and not just the prescription kind. He's also got huge problems with narcotics abuse starting in the 1940s. He was also linked romantically with Lupe Velez, Marlene Dietrich, and Dolores Del Rio, among literally hundreds of others. Carol Lombard is said to have resisted his advances, but invited him to extravagant parties. He was a regular attendee of William Randolph Hearst's equally lavish affairs at Hearst Castle. Yeah, that's Citizen Kane himself. But he was once asked to leave because he was pissed and trying to literally assault a woman in the castle. So he was kicked out.
Oh.
Yeah, but he was invited back. just a one-night thing. I know. So on top of that, he got into physical altercations with numerous people. One in particular, John Huston, on the set of The Roots of Heaven. For his behavior, because of his on-set behavior, John Huston gave him shit. He was like, "Fuck you, I'm Errol Flynn." They got into a fist fight, and John Huston knocked him out with one punch.
Ooh,
so yeah, because I like that too. Because there's one person on this planet who's tougher than Errol Flynn. It's John Huston, who is like a fucking insane human being as well. So yeah,
not sure I know. I'm gonna go look up John Huston now too.
You might know his daughter, Angelica.
I do.
Yes.
Okay.
And Sam, who is also quite a famous actor. So you'll know those two. But John Huston did a lot of like westerns and stuff. And he's also an interesting character. May not have been such a saint himself, but he punched Errol Flynn in the face. So
you know what? Going back to that cowboy, I rephrase my statement that cowboys are an odd breed. I think cowboys just think that they're so hard that they can beat everybody up. And I think that maybe that cowboy thought that he could have, and that maybe Errol just surprised him.
Yeah. Also, this is a much like Errol Flynn was much younger at that point. Like that was the late 30s.
Pre-heart attack.
Yeah. Pre-heart attack, pre 2 or 3 STIs. You know, he's still reasonably athletic at this point, but like this is much later, and his fucking heart is failing him at this point. So John Huston, he's been punched by John Huston, knocked out. As a result of his drinking, he was banned on most sets from touching alcohol during the entire shoots. So he was known to inject his oranges with vodka to get his fix. So he'd take these oranges and just like needle the vodka in just to get his fix. Wow. After his death of a heart attack, it was concluded that his liver was in such bad shape that he would have died within a year anyway, because his liver was fucked. That's not good.
He was making nature screwdrivers.
I know, which is crazy. And like, also, I hate to point this out, and we'll get to it in a bit. He had ready access to needles at this point. So, yeah. Another random thing about popular culture. Have you ever heard the phrase "in like Flynn"?
I have.
Yeah.
I never thought about it though.
It's coined to refer to Errol Flynn and the supreme ease with which he reputedly seduced women. That's what that means.
I may have to rethink my uses of that phrase.
Yeah.
I learn that more and more often. I need to stop saying shit that I say.
I mean, if you don't know the origin of stuff, you can kind of be excused. But in like Flynn is literally like, oh, he's going to fuck that woman. He's in like himself.
Goodness.
Yes. So Flynn was reportedly fond of the expression and later claimed he wanted to call his memoirs "In Like Me." But the but the publisher insisted on a more lurid title, My Wicked, Wicked Ways. His title was better, but still,
yeah, it was.
his title was In Like Me. Like, that's actually, I can kind of, I think that works. Now let's get to the really fucking hard part. Wow, this is like some of the Flynn stuff. You're like, oh, that's kind of cheeky and good natured. Some of it, you're like, oh, that's horrible. This stuff is. Flynn had various mirrors and hiding places constructed in his mansion, including an overhead trapdoor above a guest bedroom for surreptitious viewings. He would come home and there'd be like dozens of people in his house because he had an open door policy, and he would invite people around. He would invite people to this man is patient zero. Yeah, he's the super spreader. He is. All of the modern STIs come from Errol Flynn.
Oh, goodness.
So yeah, he invited people around to stay at his house, and like he'd invite the women to stay over, but he was like, "Don't worry, you've got this private room; it's all yours." But he would deliberately like shut all the windows and doors and make the house as hot as possible, so they would sleep like on top of the covers, or maybe in like less clothes, and they would feel safe because he's not in the room, but actually he's behind a fucking mirror with an eye poked through it, and like. Yeah,
that's just creepy.
Fucking horrible creep, this piece of shit. Rolling Stones guitarist Ronnie Wood toured the house as a prospective buyer in the 1970s and reported Errol had two-way mirrors, speaker systems in the ladies' room, not for security, just that he was an A1 voyeur creep. Yes, Ronnie, you are correct.
Man. There's nothing wrong with being a voyeur as long as the people that you're voyeuring are aware and consenting.
Consent is important, especially in voyeurism, but that is
creepy.
Fucking horrible. That's like, that makes Chuck Berry look calm and normal. That's how bad that is. Peeping Tom bingo. Yeah, we're almost at the bingo stage yet, but we aren't quite there. There's still some awful, awful stuff to come. In March 1955, the popular Hollywood gossip magazine Confidential ran a salacious article entitled "The Greatest Show in Town, Errol Flynn, His Two-Way Mirror." They knew it before. Yeah. In her 1966 biography, actress Hedy Lamarr wrote, "Many of the bathrooms have peepholes or ceilings with squares of opaque glass through which you can't see, but someone is looking at all times." I feel gross just reading that.
Yeah. Like, God, I'm not about like shaming anybody for their kinks or anything that they're into, because like, do you, man?
Yeah.
Don't be a creeper.
Consent again, important. And also, he had a schnauzer dog named Arno, which was I know it's fucking hilarious, which was specially trained to protect him because he was paranoid. He was getting paranoid at this point.
I was just thinking of a mini schnauzer then, because
that would have been even better. He's trained the dog to protect him. They went together to premieres, parties, restaurants, and clubs until the dog's death in 1941. On June 15th, 1938, during filming, Arno bit Betty Davis on the ankle in a scene where she struck Flynn. Maybe wise your dog up, or don't take it to set that day.
Yeah,
you've got
especially
enough.
if you're training it to protect you.
I know. You've got enough women who don't know you're staring at them staying in your house. Let one of them help you look after the dog for a while, and maybe don't stare at them that night. While it was well known that Flynn was a rampant alcoholic, that there was one substance that he was known to ingest over the years, Flynn began experimenting with a series of other substances. You know what I do to keep dogs from humping your leg? I don't know. I don't know where this is going. OG butt stuff.
I don't know if I want to know where it's going.
No, I don't know if I want to know with a name like that. No, we're not going to put that on the podcast. So according to his second wife, he was determined to experience as much as he could, which led him to try opium in the 1940s. That's a slippery slope. Unfortunately, opium would become another addiction that he would struggle with for the rest of his life, alongside morphine and heroin. So, yeah.
So all of those then.
Yeah, all of the downers, all of the needles to inject your oranges with vodka, and yeah. It's fucking horrible. More stuff. Flynn's friend, director Raoul Walsh, claims to have played one of the ultimate pranks on Flynn. The day after the death of John Barrymore, supposedly Walsh bribed the mortician to release the body to him. He then set the body up on a chair holding a drink in Flynn's home. Yeah. He defiled a corpse. Yeah, he defiled a corpse. In his autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, Flynn notes, as I opened the door, I stared in the face of Barrymore. His eyes were closed. He looked puffed, white, and bloodless. They hadn't embalmed him yet. I let out a delirious scream. My heart pounded. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. Some friend, this guy tried to fucking kill him. Also, John Barrymore was one of his his friend and mentor, which is probably explains some of the alcoholism. But so they were like, let's get his friend out of embalming and put him in his home. Like that's a horrible thing. Also, this man's already had a heart attack. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, at least they didn't put it on trial.
No, that's true. Even before becoming one of the most famous actors in the world, Flynn was known for his love of women. Well, we've covered that. Which only increased in the more popular he became. According to his close friend David Niven, Flynn's attitude to women perhaps began with his strained relationship with his mother, Meryl, who, from the age of 5, Flynn had witnessed her affairs with other men in front of him.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, there's your trauma. Also, apparently, she used to beat him quite a lot.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, I'm getting it. Like, there's a real Rorschach thing going on with this guy. Like, he's witnessing his mother have multiple affairs with other men, and then she's like beating him as well. Like, that's starting to see why he's kind of fucked up.
And then she's like, "Here, have my made-up name without the M."
I know. That's really weird. Despite what one biographer claims, this is one thing that we know isn't true.
Okay.
But it's a lie that wasn't made up by Errol Flynn for a change. One of Flynn's biographers, who seems to hate him for some reason, claimed that Flynn was a Nazi spy and had the location of one of his films moved so that he could spy on the American fleet in San Francisco at the time and report back to the Japanese who would send it on and use it and stuff. He's basically, this is the guy. The guy says that he has a bunch of proof. He's like, oh, I've been in contact with this person who worked at MI5 and this person who worked in the CIA, and the FBI ran a trace on him, which is true. The FBI did look into Errol Flynn, but that's because the FBI was looking into everyone at this time because it was J. Edgar Hoover's era, and they didn't find anything on him. They dropped it. And this guy said, oh, but I've got documents released by the Soviets that show that he was a Nazi spy. And they were like, can we see those documents? He's like, no. So, that's kind of a bit suspicious. So when I don't think he was a Nazi spy, I think he's just a prick. Didn't help the Flynn kind of had a bunch of friends who were anti-Semitic, like openly anti-Semitic, and published it, and also friends with an actual Nazi. So maybe pick your friends a bit better in that circumstance. Yeah. Now, in the last 2 years of Flynn's life, he was involved with yet another scandal. He's 50 years old. Oh, no, 48. He began traveling with a 15-year-old secretary called Beverly Ardland. The underage girl was also Flynn's mistress at the time. The relationship had been unbelievably arranged by Ardland's mother, who would later proudly write a book about her daughter's affair with Flynn. No. So many horrible people in this story so far.
Well, I just realized that I was laughing at a joke in the comments while you were saying horrible things, but then I caught on to the horrible things, and it's just, Yeah.
I there it is. There it is. That's the one. We can publish that one. That one's funny.
That was a good one.
That was a good one. So many horrible people. By 1959, Flynn's financial difficulties and the fact that he hasn't paid tax in fucking ever had become so serious that he flew on the 9th of October to Vancouver, British Columbia, to negotiate the release of his yacht Zaka to lease of his yacht Zaka to the businessman George Caldo. As Caldo was driving Flynn and the then 17-year-old actress Beverly Ardland, who had accompanied him on the trip, to the airport on the 14th of October, For a Los Angeles-bound flight, Flynn began complaining of severe pain in his back and legs. That's a problem. Caldo transported him to the residence of a doctor, Grant Gould, who noted that Flynn had considerable difficulty navigating the building's stairway. Could also have been booze. So,
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair, for sure. Gould, assuming the pain was due to a degenerative disc disease and spinal osteoporosis, Jesus Christ, administered 50 milligrams of Demerol intravenously. Ooh.
Wow.
That's not good. Yeah.
Now he's definitely not walking upstairs.
No, that's a lot of Demerol. Holy shit. As Flynn's discomfort diminished, he reminisced at great length about his past experiences to those present. So he's like, here's your reward for stopping me from dying. Let me tell you about all the women I fucked. He refused a drink when offered, and Gould then performed a leg massage in the apartment's bedroom. Hello. And advised Flynn to rest there before resuming his journey. Flynn responded that he felt ever so much better after 20 minutes. Ardlin checked on Flynn 20 minutes after that and found him unresponsive. Despite immediate medical treatment from Gould and a swift transfer by ambulance to Vancouver General Hospital, he did not regain consciousness and was pronounced dead that evening. The coroner's report and the death certificate noted that the cause of death was myocardial infarction due to coronary thrombosis and coronary atherosclerosis. Holy shit.
Goodness.
With fatty degeneration of liver and partial cirrhosis of the liver significant enough to be listed as contributing factors. Flynn was survived by both of his parents.
Oh, wow.
That's really bad.
That's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll get to that in a second, actually. Flynn was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery in Glendale, California, a place he once remarked that he hated.
Oops. Well, there you go.
But
guess it's
they buried,
fitting.
Yeah, but they buried him with 6 bottles of whiskey. So swings and roundabouts, I guess.
And facing down so the world can kiss his ass.
Yeah, exactly. So you'd think that was enough. But now let's get to Errol Flynn's posthumous controversies. In 1982, an interview with Penthouse magazine, Ronald DeWolf, son of author L. Ron Hubbard, said that his father's friendship with Flynn was so strong that Hubbard's family considered Flynn an adoptive father to DeWolf. He said that Flynn and his father engaged in illegal activities together, including drug smuggling. I can kind of believe that.
Yeah.
And sexual acts with underage girls, but that Flynn never joined Scientology, Hubbard's religion. So, that's Errol Flynn. Let me give you the list here.
Goodness.
Womanizer, tax dodger, alcoholic, drug addict, wife beater, 1930s version of Jeffrey Epstein, possible murderer, Nazi spy, maybe, slave trader, possibly, but almost certainly a piece of shit.
Yep, definitely.
So,
wow.
I mean, talk about bingo cards for awful human beings. I don't think we can get more than that. It's yeah. Where do you start with Errol Flynn?
Man, like, I feel like I heard maybe there was some bad stuff.
Yeah, me too. I heard a couple of bits. Like, I think I heard the stuff about drugs and the womanizing and the drinking. I didn't hear half of that shit.
Right. No, yeah, I definitely didn't. And I'm learning more and more and more that I don't know shit about shit. And like, there's so much stuff that I just wasn't paying enough attention to my entire life that like people make references to that I'm just like, huh? Yeah, okay, yeah. And like in like Flynn,
I know.
I assumed it was related to the actor type of thing, but I like womanizing, haha, funny. I guess it's not funny.
No. And actually, it's funny because when I was doing the reel for this before we went on air, I was like, oh, I wonder if there's a song about Errol Flynn. And I typed in like Flynn into the music search bar. There's a band called In Like Flynn. There's about 8 songs called In Like Flynn. There's about 25 songs about Errol Flynn. Most of them like, hey, he liked to fuck women.
I want to say I originally thought it was about Larry Flint from Penthouse.
Yeah.
Or Hustler. What was it? Hustler.
Hustler, yeah.
Yeah. But that would have made
a
sense
much better
too.
person than Errol Flynn, significantly better person, and that's a guy who was awful as well. So
may have just landed on somebody.
Yes.
Yeah. God, I don't even know where to score this one because I want to score him really high, just based on number of STIs.
Well, yeah, like 1 point for every STI, and we're already in the 50s. So, but I also think like we have to, some of this, like the Nazi spy thing wasn't true.
Yeah.
That's almost certain. I'm not sure about the murder and the slave trading thing. Like it sounds vaguely true, but my Kimberly here, my score is 2023. I will not accept anything less. It's really, really difficult to now score. I don't think he murdered anyone. I think he's just saying that to be like, I was a swashbuckler and a bandit and all of that shit. I don't know if that's true.
Right, but he ridiculously made shit up about himself. And then
I guess like to distract from the other stuff.
Really. He serially went after underagers.
Yeah, and like didn't pay any tax. He had all of the addictions you could possibly have. He didn't look after himself. He ruined other people's lives. And
he beat his wife up.
Yeah, he beat up his wife, threw a random woman down a flight of stairs. This guy was horrible. He was married multiple times. All of his wives were beaten. One of them was 19 years old when he met her, and he was like 40. And he was married to her at the time that he was sleeping with the 15-year-old. So
yeah, okay.
It's bad. Wait.
I think it's fair to go with a 97 for him.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That is high.
That's
it's a lot.
That's a lot of underage, and there's rapey in there, and I don't like that. Yeah. And then also slave trade. That's not good. Yeah, and he told that himself.
Yeah, he boasted about that, and he was very violent. The weird thing is, and I guess a lot of it is, he was just being a man. Like a lot of people liked him. Like I just mentioned David Niven, who was like a real gentleman, like a really kind of he was in that terrible James Bond Casino Royale from the 60s and stuff, but he was like a classic screen gentleman, British kind of sir, very knightly and stuff. But he seems to really like Errol Flynn, seems to think he was a great guy, but actually from what we can tell, he was horrible to a lot of people.
Yeah. So, yeah. And to say stuff like, well, he's just being a guy, perhaps maybe we should think about not allowing people like that to be role models for people that are coming up, and have that be that's what a guy is.
Yeah, I feel like because also we should point out this is during the Hays Code. So obviously like studios are going to try and protect the reputation of their stars, because the Hays Code meant that you couldn't like imply sex on screen, you couldn't show drinking, you couldn't show much violence and all that. And thankfully the 60s came along and destroyed the Hays Code, things like Easy Rider and what was that?
Is there sex in the afterlife?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there's that. What was it? A Bonnie
Debbie Does Dallas?
No, well, yeah, that. But Bonnie and Clyde was around the 60s, and that was really violent. And things like MASH, which had the first F word on screen. So the Hays Code destroyed that, but studios at the time were desperate to protect the reputation of their stars as like these wholesome, handsome, athletic people. But actually, Errol Flynn was the exact opposite. And I feel like that sense of trying to protect people in Hollywood and make them out to be better than they were, it kind of continued until very, very recently with the Me Too movement. And now if people are pieces of shit, usually you will find out about it and they won't be able to get away with it for too long. So
yeah, and I think that's kind of a better way to be. Then you don't end up with, somebody like me thinking that Danny Masterson's awesome.
Yeah, Danny, and
it was disappointing as hell.
Yeah, and actually that thing where they wrote like, "Oh, Danny Masterson's a wonderful person." What's it, Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. That's weird. I mean, I understand sticking up for your friend, but don't say he was like a perfect human being. Just talk about your interactions with him. I think that's probably the best way to go. Look, nobody's a saint. Nobody is a perfect human being, and we should, people deserve a second chance. Absolutely. Yes. They deserve multiple chances. And you shouldn't judge people for their addictions or their problems. But Errol Flynn in this instance seemed to revel in how horrible he was and seemed to do nothing to change his ways, have any kind of empathy towards anyone, and just seemed to be taking advantage of life as much as possible. He even admitted that he didn't care if he lived long.
Yeah.
He just wanted to do whatever the fuck he wanted forever, basically. So,
and that's what led to my score, is that he was proud of who he was.
He
Absolutely.
Was. Yeah. He did not care. So 97, I will take that. And for the media hoaxer, Irwin Able gets a 1. So we're close to 100 in this episode. So that's kind of amazing. Our lowest score on one of our highest ever scores in this episode.
I think really cool. I may have popped that up there as the highest. I don't remember what Midgley has.
Midgley has 98.
Okay.
So, and New Jack has 96, 97 because of
he's definitely higher than New Jack. I know he didn't stab anybody, but
no, he didn't stab. Well, we don't know he didn't stab anyone. He may have stabbed someone he tried to enslave, potentially, but we haven't read his biography, so could be bullshit.
Not going to either.
No, exactly. I don't think. Don't
named it wrong.
Yeah, because he got the wrong name. Like Me is a fucking great name, but actually, if he's talking about being a slave trader and a murderer in there, that's don't read that book. So yeah, Errol Flynn 97 and Irwin Able 1. Just amazing. So thank you all for stopping by. I had a lot of fun. Oh, I wouldn't know. That's the wrong thing. I had a lot of fun listening to yours. And I had to step away from the computer after researching mine because it was so dark.
That's understandable.
Yeah. And just, I think the thing that struck me was just that he just did not care. He did not mind that he was this awful person. And generally, I have all the sympathy in the world for people that show contrition, that people who say, I have done awful things and I am so sorry for them. I'm going to try not to do them again. I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to try and get over this addiction or get past this problem, whatever it might be. If you are in that position, I will give you the time of day. I actually think that's really enviable. That's a really wonderful thing to do. And the world should be more open to giving people second chances. However, if you are Errol Flynn and you do not care about anything and you are just out for yourself, fuck you. So
agreed.
Basically. So thank you, Kimberly. That was an amazing episode. Thank you. It felt good. Thank you guys so much. If you want to support us by slinging us a little bit of cash, go to patreon.com/history's greatest idiots, where you will see exclusive posts. We're actually thinking about working on an exclusive Patreon only video series that we'll be trying to start up in the next few weeks, and you will see behind the scenes stuff like scripts and a bunch of behind the scenes stuff like my holiday, which I haven't posted on social media. So yeah, go and check that out. And if you want to follow us on Twitter/X, go to @greatestidiots. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, go to History's Greatest Idiots. And if also you want to see us on YouTube, if you're not watching live right now on YouTube, you can see all of our previous episodes and videos right there in glorious 720p on YouTube. Just search for History's Greatest Idiots. And next episode will be a Halloween special. So please stick around for that.
Should I dress up?
If you want to. I'm not going to. I'm going to dress up as man with an autoimmune disease who has no time or energy. So that's my costume every year. Maybe I'll wear a luchador mask. Who knows? Or briefly wear it. Yeah, there we go. That's my gift to the Halloween gods. But yeah, thank you guys so much. And again, thank you one more time to our wonderful Patreons. So that's Jesse Christ, Kimberly Johnson, and Andrew Zavara. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. You really do make our lives so much easier, and we love you guys so much. And all of our fans as well. Thank you for supporting us and getting us to the point where we're nearly at 1,000 Spotify followers and nominated for Independent Podcast Awards Best Comedy Podcast. That's cool shit.
I'm just happy to be listed alongside Clown Sex.
Yes, it's an honor to be listed alongside such luminaries as Clown Sex. Nothing says top of your game like competing against Clown Sex. Thank you guys so much. We will see you again in a couple of weeks. Derek, would you like to say goodbye?
Bye, everybody.
And we will see you all again soon. Take care now. Bye.